Okay. Good morning again. We are in Sanhedrin 20b, and we are going to go into the realms of the supernatural today. I'm going to be well out of my comfort zone. We've been more in Hannah's territory than mine today, but nevertheless, we have to do it. And having read what we're going to learn today, which is actually we're going to skip into Gemarah Gittin 68b. Having read that in preparation for this shiur, I wonder.
Hello?
Yes, Hannah.
You sent me homework last week.
I did. I'm going to give you the homework, a chance to give you your homework in a second. I'm just setting the scene. So I'll come back to you in a sec. So yeah, having gone into this Gemara in some detail in Gittin, which we're going to look at, I wonder whether J.K. Rowling has learnt this Gemara, because it's certainly full of wonderful creatures and wouldn't have been out of place in the Harry Potter series. So we'll start by, before we go to Hannah's homework, we will just recap as to why we gave Hannah the homework we did in the first place. And we started, I'll share the screen. We're on Sanhedrin 20b, page 119, if you are in the Steinsaltz. There it is on the screen for you. We started over here saying, Amar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish said, Batechila, in the beginning, Malach Shlomo al Ha'elyonim. Shlomo reigned over the supernatural world. And we spoke about that a bit last week, and we went into 68b in Gittin, but we're going to go back to it soon. Shnema, and he quotes the pasuk, Vayeshiv Shlomo al Kisei Hashem. Shlomo sat on the throne of Hashem. And then, says Reish Lakish, Ulabasof, and in the end, Malach al, I'm just going to mute everyone because I have got some feedback in my thing. I'll come to you in a sec, Julia. Let me just mute everybody so that I've not got feedback. Ray, that's better. So Ulabasof Malach ala Tachtonim. And in the end, he reigned over the lower worlds only. If you remember last week, we had a discussion about what Tachtonim meant. Because he had dominion over the region on this side of the river from Tifsach to Gaza. And I showed you a map, which was from the biblical something or other. And David Mark showed us a similar map in, I think it was, I can't remember, David, where was the map that you found us for us? You're muted. I muted you.
Mikra.
The Dart Mikra. The Dart Mikra is a similar map showing that Tifsach was actually a long way away, northern Syria, over the other side of the river Euphrates. And David said to us at the end of last shiur that this was possibly Aram Naharaim, where Abraham came from, known as the Ivri, the Hebrew. And of course, Ivri comes from the word Aver, the other side of. And this was the other side of the Euphrates river. Let me see if I've still got that map. There it is. Oh, no, that's not the right one. Let's just, sorry, that's not the right one. That's Gezer. Let me just try again to find that map. There it is, Bible Map Mishmash. There we go. No, that's not the right one either. That's Michmash.
Johnny?
Yes.
One quick question. The derivation of the name Ivri, I've heard several things meaning blue eyes or other things, Aryan. But that was 20 years ago. Where did you learn this, the translation for Ivri, and from what language is it?
Okay, so Ivri is from Hebrew, as it so happens. Aver means on the other side. Rashi brings that when Avraham Avinu, Abraham, is first called an Ivri, Rashi says that it means on the other side. And there are two explanations to that. One is a geographical thing, which he was came from the other side of the river. And the other explanation is that he was philosophically on the other side. In other words, the world was predominantly polytheistic, and he was monotheistic. He believed in the one God, and he was, as it were, a lone voice. He wasn't quite a lone voice, actually, but he was almost a lone voice in proposing monotheism, and therefore he was described as Ivri, on the other side. So philosophically on the other side of the belief spectrum to the rest of the world. But Aver means on the other side, and it's Hebrew. And so the Ivri is the one who is Aver, the one who is from the other side. What David Marks told us last week, the Dat Mikra, suggests that this place, Tifsach, was on the other side of the Euphrates, as we showed in the map. Can't just find it right now. And that was the Ivri bit. Okay, Julia, you were looking perplexed. Tell us why. You're muted. You're not perplexed.
I looked it up. I didn't know the word supernal, which you may have covered last week anyway, but I looked it up and I could see what it means.
Yeah, I think it means sort of supernatural in a way, sort of outside of our worlds.
It says relating to the heavens.
Yeah, supernal. Yeah. I think is the way it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Okay. It means out of our world into the upper heavenly realms, and it's the contrast to tachtonim, and in the actual Gemarah you can see that, because El means on high. We describe HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Keil Elyon, don't we? The God who is in there of most high. We say it in Tehillim. We say it in many places. Keil Elyon, the God who is in the heavens. The opposite of Elyon, which is, you can see the word Aliyah in there, can't you? Mean to go up. That's the same root of the same word. The opposite of the upper worlds is Tachton, which means lower, the lower world. You can also see another word which you will be familiar with in the middle of that word, Tachat. Or if I was to say it in a Ashkenazi pronunciation and Yiddishize it a bit, it would come out as
Tochus.
Tochus. Yes, Tochus, meaning your bottom. So this is the same word. So Elyon is the higher worlds, Tachtonim are the lower worlds. And so originally, says Reish Lakish, Shlomo HaMelech reigned over the upper worlds, and then in the end, he only reigned over the lower worlds, but he reigned over the whole world, effectively the whole world, from Tifsach in northern Syria, Ad Azza, until southern Israel, Gaza. And then we go further. This is new now. This is what we didn't do. Oh no, we did do this is what we ended with last week. Rav and Shmuel. By the way, Rav and Shmuel, it's worthwhile just noting who Rav and Shmuel were. Rav and Shmuel were the main Amoraim of the Gemarah who were arguing with one another. They were the Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai are to the Mishnah as Rav and Shmuel are to the Gemarah. So you'll be familiar with Hillel and Shammai always arguing. They can't agree on anything. Hillel says black, Shammai says white, and same with Rav and Shmuel. All the way through the Gemarah, you see that Rav and Shmuel are arguing about various things. And here we have another example. One of them says Tifsach b'sof ha'olam. One of them says this place Tifsach was all over the place, miles away, the end of the world. Va'aza b'sof ha'olam, and Gaza is at the other end of the world. In other words, he reigned over this massive place. V'chadam, and the other one says, Tifsach ba'aza b'hadeh hadadeh hava yatvo. They were next to one another. And I think that we showed last week that they were 24 kilometers away, according to this opinion. So that isn't exactly the end of the world. But they say, Ukeshem shemalach al tifsach va'al aza. Just as Shlomo ruled over Tifsach and Aza, which were close to one another, Kach malach al kol ha'olam kulo. Similarly, he ruled over the whole world. So that was, he started ruling even over the heavens. Then he ruled over only the lower world. And now this is new stuff that we're doing this week. And then Reish Lakish continues and says, you know what? Ulabasof, and in the end, Lo malach ela al Yisrael. He was only king over Israel. And he quotes a pasuk. He quotes a pasuk from Kohelet. Let's have a look at it. There it is. Ani Kohelet, says Shlomo Melech. I am Kohelet. Hayiti, interesting, Hayiti. I was Melech al Yisrael. I was a king over Israel, Yerushalayim. Now, why did he say?
That's the opening pasuk of Kohelet.
I'm coming to that in a minute, Hannah. You've preempted me there, and you'll see why in a second. Just to stay with me for the second. Why would Kohelet say, I was king in Israel? Kohelet is Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech, let me ask you a question. Who was king before Shlomo HaMelech? David. Who was king after Shlomo HaMelech? Rechavam. Okay. Did Shlomo die as king or not?
Question mark.
Okay. All right. That wasn't the answer you were meant to give. It's a right answer, but it's not the answer you were meant to give. The answer you were meant to give is yes, that he died as king. And I would have said, well, that's not quite so sure about that. Why is it a question mark, Hannah?
Well, in the course of trying to find out about this shamir, I also ended up in the Gemarah.
Okay, right. Okay, fine. You can tell us in a minute then. All right. So I would like to suggest to you that from this pasuk, we have a bit of a proof, maybe, that Shlomo was not the king when he died, because he can't have written Kohelet after he died. I think we're agreed on that, right? He can only have written Kohelet while he was alive. And why would he say, I was king in Israel, over Israel in Yerushalayim? He ought to have said, Ani Kohelet, Melech al Yisrael b'Yerushalayim. I am king in Israel.
But he's writing it in a very reflective way. That's what the whole of Kohelet is, isn't it? It is very much reflective. It's true. And that may well be the case. But I just wanted to point out that there is perhaps a literary proof for what Hannah might tell us. And if she doesn't, I will later on. Okay. So let's just whiz back to the Gemarah now, if we can.
Is it possible that he really wrote it as if it were being published posthumously, which I think is what Julia may have been saying by reflective?
Yes,
that it
I
is
think that's
written
right.
as though it is from the Olam Haba in order to impart wisdom to all the world.
Yeah, I think that's a fair explanation of it. The simple explanation is that he is no longer king when he wrote it. But yes, I would accept both things, which is why, of course, there is a question mark over the whole thing. Right. So now then, he started off being king of the heavens as well as the world. Then he was king of the whole world. And then he was king of just Israel. And then Reish Lakish goes further and he says, Ulabasof, lo malach ela al Yerushalayim. He wasn't even king over the whole of Israel. He was only king over Yerushalayim. And that is what Hannah is telling us over here. And she said, what about the first pasuk? Okay, the very first pasuk of Kohelet. Divrei Kohelet ben David, Melech b'Yerushalayim. These are the words of Kohelet, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Now then, that doesn't say I was king in Jerusalem, does it? So there you have your there you have your machloket. In part of Kohelet, it says he is king. And in the other part, in the same chapter, 11 verses later, it says, I was king. So your explanation that it was entirely reflective perhaps doesn't quite fit with verse 1, fits with verse 12.
But he's saying,
not in verse 1.
But he is king in Jerusalem. He could still be king of Israel. It's a different.
Okay, but there's a contrast. You're right. On its own, that's true. But when you have a contrast, then the Bible critics or the literary critics will always look and say, wait a minute, something here. There is a stira. There is a contradiction here. There's a contrast. And we'll always try and find something to learn from that contrast. What Reish Lakish in the Gemarah is saying is that contrast shows you. I've got a bigger question, and that is, should have been the other way around. You should have had, I am king over Israel in Jerusalem first, and then I am king in Jerusalem, if you're going to sort of say it's a diminution of his kingdom. That would be my question on it. But nevertheless, the Gemarah still talks about the diminution of his kingdom to Jerusalem, and he quotes that pasuk. But we go further. Not only did he end up not being king of Jerusalem, ulabasof, he wasn't king of anything. Lo malach ela al mitato. He only ruled over his own bed. In other words, he had lost his entire kingdom. He just had his own bed. And they quote a pasuk from Shir Hashirim, which was another verse, another book that Shlomo wrote. And here it is on the screen for you. Shir Hashirim. It is in chapter 3, verse 7. Hine mitato shel Shlomo. Behold, Shlomo's bed. My translation here says the litter of Solomon. I don't really know what that means.
Is it meant to be the grave?
No, I don't think so.
A litter is generally a bed.
A litter is a bed, is that right?
I believe it is. It is generally a bed. Yeah,
sometimes.
I think it sometimes can even mean a movable bed as opposed to a shelf. But I believe a litter is a bed.
So I've always understood a litter to be, a litter of babies that animals have.
No, that's all different completely.
A litter is also what soldiers carry their wounded in on the field.
Ah, so it's like a type of a bed, like a stretcher.
Yeah, a stretcher. That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay, so that's helpful. That explains it, because I wasn't sure what that meant. But it's interesting, because when I don't understand the English, I go to the Hebrew, and the Hebrew helps me out, because it says mitato. And of course, we know, don't we, from the Hebrew, that mita is a bed. A bed. So Shlomo's bed had shishim giborim saviv, 60 mighty men around it. Mi giborei Yisrael. So in the end, says Reish Lakish, Shlomo's kingdom had contracted from being right up in the heavens to, excuse me, to the whole world, to Israel, to Yerushalayim, to just his own little bed. And he's got around his bed, he's got his 60 strong men. In other words, he still had some kind of loyalty from the brave men, from the soldiers. They were protecting him, but he was very much so. That's a litter that. Oh, that's a litter. Yes, of course. Julia is showing us a picture. Julia, say something for us, Julia, because then your picture will come up on the screen for the recording.
I don't know if I.
Yeah, we can see it.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Yes, this is a litter, and somebody is reclining on it.
Turn it to you a bit further towards in front of your face. We can't see it. No, the other way. There we go. That's it. Thank you very much. It's excellent. That's a litter. Right. So Shlomo's litter, Shlomo's one of those stretchers that he's carried on for being the king. That's all he ruled over in the end, according to Reish Lakish. So there we go. Except that isn't the end. That isn't the end. It gets worse. Ulabasov, and ultimately, says Reish Lakish, he declined so much in his rulership. Lo malach ela al maklo. He only ruled over his makel. What's a makel?
His staff.
Yeah, his stick. A stick. If you said staff, you might mean it means the people that work for you, as in staff.
No, I like Aharon's staff.
Yeah, I knew what you meant, but I deliberately wanted to use the word stick so that the word staff, as in people who work for you, didn't get mixed up.
Is that separate? Is that separate from the meaning of a scepter?
Yes.
Which is the staff? Is the staff that a king holds as a scepter?
Correct. There's a different word for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Who can tell me what the word for that is and where you know it from? Okay, you do know where it's from, even if you don't know the word. It was golden.
Zahav.
Zahav, yes, it was Zahav. It was golden. And somebody held it out for somebody to touch. Come on, you know this. Who held out?
Ahasuerus held his out so that Esther could be accepted into the court with her request.
That's correct. And what is the word that is used there for the golden scepter?
No,
Argaman means purple. Tchelet means blue. Yes, Sharon.
In Google Translate for modern Hebrew, it's a sharbit.
That's exactly the word that is used in the Megillat Esther.
Oh, okay.
Very
Yay,
good.
Google. Yay, Google.
Good for Google. Sharvit hazahav is the golden scepter. So here, makel is the opposite, really. This makel is, and I'll show you a source for it in a moment. But where does Reish Lakish get it from? Why does he say that all that he had was his staff? And he goes back to Kohelet. And he goes to the next chapter of Kohelet, chapter 2. And he says like this, he quotes this pasuk. It's on the screen for you now. And everything that my eyes desired, lo atzalti mehem, I did not deprive them from it. In other words, anything that my eye desired, I got. Lo manati et libi mikol simcha. I did not deprive my heart of any joy. Ki libi samach mikol amalai. My heart rejoiced with everything that I worked for. Now, if you stop that full stop there, you would say, wow, this guy's fabulous. Everything that he wanted, he had. He had absolutely everything. And then the pasuk ends, V'zeh haya chelki mikol amalai. And this was my portion from all my hard work. And so the Gemarah is now going to ask us a question. What does it mean? V'zeh. And this was my portion from all the toil. So when he says, I did not deprive myself of anything, I enjoyed everything in the world. And this is what I've got left of it. Zeh chelki. This is my portion. Now, the Gemarah is going to tell us what that meant. There's the quote of our pasuk. Zeh haya chelki mikol amali. This was my portion from all my work. Rav Shmuel, again, our Rav and Shmuel can't agree. Chad Amar, one says maklo, or is a reference to his stick, his staff. The Chad Amar, and the other one says gunnado. It is a reference to his cloak. Now, what are we talking about here? Okay, so we need to go and see what we're talking about here. Where would we see a reference to somebody's staff or stick being an indication that he has absolutely nothing left from his previous riches or high position? Because that's what this is referring to. What he's saying is, I had everything in the world, everything. Whatever my heart desired, I had, and all I've got left is my stick. Now, where do we have a reference in the Torah to a stick being a reference to I was once had lots of things and now I don't have very much at all, just my stick? This is in David Mark's territory, so I'll ask him in a moment. Anything that is involved with Kriyat Torah is in David Mark's territory. So go on, David. Where am I referring to? You're muted at the moment, David.
Katonti mikol hachasadim mikol ha'emet asher asita et avdecha ki v'makli avarti et hayarden hazeh.
There we go. Couldn't have said it better myself. It's on the screen for you. I know my customers. I know my customers. Now, David is quite correct. It's from the situation of Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu. He is coming in to meet with Esav, his brother, and he says, Katonti mikol hachasadim. I have become small from all the kindnesses, umikol ha'emet, and all the truth, asher asita et avdecha, that you, Hashem, have done to your servant, i.e. me. Ki, because b'makli, with my staff, and in brackets, and only with my staff, avarti et hayarden hazeh, I crossed this Jordan, va'ata, and now hayiti lishnei machanot, and now I've got all this wonderful wealth into two camps. And the Midrash tells us that this is an allusion to when it says, with my staff and only my staff, I crossed the Jordan. This is an allusion to 22 years earlier. What happened 22 years earlier?
He ran away from Esav.
He ran away from Esav. And presumably when he ran away from Esav, he wasn't actually running like that second, because before he went, his father told him, go off and get a wife from Lavan. And no doubt he was sent with stuff. How do I know he was sent with stuff? He wouldn't have been sent with nothing. Why?
Marriage dowry.
Yeah, he needed a marriage dowry. Where do we learn that from, Julia? That when you go to find a wife, you have to take stuff with you.
It's the story of Lavan.
From Abraham and Eliezer.
Yes, Eliezer. When Eliezer
When
went
he went to buy Yitzhak a wife.
Yeah, I'm not so sure which way you can buy a wife, but yeah, when he went to acquire, let's be a bit kinder and say when he went to acquire a wife for Yitzchak, what did he take with him? Can you remember?
All sorts of things.
Yeah, 10 camels worth, right? All sorts of gear. And what did he give to Rivka straight away?
Ring.
Zahav.
Yeah, bracelets and nose rings and all sorts of gear, right? Of gold, right? Why? Because he wanted to impress this girl, didn't he? I mean, no good saying, I want you to marry my master's son and he's a pauper. So from there, we learn that when you go to acquire a wife, you have to take dowry stuff with you. So Yaakov was told by Yitzhak, go to your uncle's house to Lavan and acquire for yourself a wife there. So for sure, he will have been sent with him dowry, equipment, gold, silver, whatever. Maybe not 10 camels worth, but it'd have been taken a decent amount. Otherwise, especially since Yitzhak would probably have known of Lavan's proclivity for monetary things. He would have known about that. So he would have sent Yaakov off with substantial amount of money in one way or another. And the Midrash tells us that somebody followed Yaakov. Okay, that was my next question. Who was it? Eliphaz, who was the son of Esav. And also Eliphaz happened to be the father of... He was the son of Esav.
Agag.
No, not Agag. He was an ancestor of Agag. But you're on the right lines.
Amalek.
Amalek, yes. Eliphaz's son was Amalek. So the father of Amalek, Eliphaz, the son of Esav, ran after Yaakov. This is a midrash. Ran after Yaakov, and when he caught up with him just about the river Jordan, and he was going to kill him. I don't quite understand this midrash actually, but anyway, Yaakov, according to the midrash, says to him, "Don't kill me. I'll give you all my money." And Eliphaz says, "Okay," and he takes all the money, and he just leaves Yaakov with his
stick.
And so then, when he says, "Ki b'makli avarti et hayarden hazeh," that with my stick (brackets and only my stick), this was because Eliphaz had taken all his money. I don't understand the midrash because Eliphaz could have killed him and taken the money anyway. But still.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
It's based on the pasuk that says "Ani nechshav kamet," and the concept in Judaism is that if a person's very poor, he's related to as if he doesn't exist, as if he's not alive. What I was taught was that's the explanation that is given for the midrash, because it's based on that pasuk. Ani nechshav kamet.
Okay.
Ani with an ayin.
Yeah. Okay. That's ani as in poor person with an ayin. Yeah. So okay, fine. So that explains it from the pasuk's point of view. But I'm wondering about when Eliphaz got back to his father, and his father says, "Did you do the deeds? Did you kill him?" And he says, "No, but I got all his money." I'm not sure that Esav would have been too pleased with that. But anyway, thank you. That's a good explanation, Hannah. Thank you for that. Anyway, Kiba Makli Avarti et hayarden hazeh. That is the origin of our Gemarah. Let's go back to the Gemarah, which says that the end, all he reigned over was his stick. And then that was Rav or Shmuel. But the other one says, no, it doesn't mean his stick. When it says, "This is all I've got for all my work was my stick," it says, this zeh is gunado, his cloak. What kind of cloak are we talking about here?
Royal cloak.
Yes, his royal cloak. Now then, let's just bring in Leslie there for a minute, because Leslie was on the right lines on something completely different. What color, Leslie, would have Shlomo's royal cloak have been?
Gold, I assume.
What other color might it have been?
Purple?
Yes, purple. Argaman. It would have been full of all those colors. It would have been full of tchelet, argaman, zahav. It would have been made of gold and purple and blue, because those were the royal colors. Now, why was I pleased that Leslie piped up with those? And I'm just going to digress now for a minute. We will get to the shamir in a minute, Hannah, I promise you. I'm going to digress a little bit now. because
you obviously don't think it's very important.
no, it's very important. It's very important. But you know, I don't want to do too much in one day. I'd be going against the grain. So I'm going to digress because since Leslie mentioned Tchelet and Argaman, I was listening to a podcast yesterday or the day before. Can't remember. No, yet not the day yesterday. The day before, and it was a podcast by a man called Rabbi Dr. Ari Greenspan. Anybody heard of him?
I've heard of him, but I can't remember in what connection.
Absolutely amazing fellow. He is originally American. He's a dentist in Yerushalayim. He was the main person, well, the main person in the team who rediscovered Tchelet, rediscovered the color of Tchelet for tzitzit. And this podcast was a history of how this came about. It was basically the history of modern Tchelet. Absolutely brilliant. So brilliant that I'm going to try and bring him to Poleg to give us a lecture on this. If I can't get him to do it, then I'm going to have to do it on his behalf with his material, because it is absolutely brilliant. But one of the things that he said, which I didn't know, was that Tchelet and Argaman both come from the same snail, and they are a spectrum. If you bring the dye out of this snail called the Murex trunculus, you get purple. But if you put the dye in sunlight whilst it's doing its bit, while you're dyeing the material, you get blue. And it's a whole spectrum of colors that this dye came out. Now, it was so expensive that he brings in this podcast a comparison, and it works out that a pound, which is about half a kilo, just under half a kilo of this stuff, in today's terms will be worth about $600,000 back in the day. And it was so precious and so important that in the time of the Romans, only the Caesar was allowed to wear a coat of argaman, of purple, or tchelet. And therefore, why is he telling us all of this? Because he was explaining how we lost the process of tchelet in the first place. We lost the process of tchelet around about 600-700, around about the time, just after the time of the Gemarah, around about 700, I think he said, we lost the knowledge of how to do it. And the reason for that was that it was a capital offense to wear anything with tchelet or argaman if you weren't one of the Roman knackers. Fascinating thing. So I was determined to get that into this today, and Leslie mentioning argaman was my entry there. So this gunado, this cloak that Shlomo was wearing, is a reference to his royal cloak, which probably had tchelet, argaman, and zahav in it. So if it's his royal cloak, then it means that he still was the king. So if he's still the king, then what does it mean that his kingdom has contracted from being at the top to the whole world, to Israel, to Jerusalem, to his own bed, and then just to his cloak? Doesn't make real sense. And so that's when we come to the next piece of Gemarah over here at the top of this page. And we'll just do these few lines and then we'll hand over to Hannah. So the Rav and Shmuel have still not finished arguing with one another on this subject. Hadar or lo hadar? The question is, did he return to being a king, after he'd lost all his kingdom, that Reish Lakish had just said, did he return to being a king or did he not return to being a king? And that is where the machloket, the question mark that Hannah said right at the beginning, when I asked the question, did Shlomo die as king? And Hannah spoiled everything for me by saying it's a machloket. That this Gemara is the reason why she was right, because Rav and Shmuel disagree. One of them says, no, he didn't return to be a king and he died as a commoner. And the other one says, no, he did return to be a king. Only he wasn't.
Which argued which point?
We
Because it
don't
doesn't
know.
say at any point.
No, we don't know. We don't. When you have this, when it says Chadamar v'Chadamar, it's an indication that the Gemara doesn't know which one said which. We just know that there was a machlokes. Sometimes we know, and it says Rav Amar and Shmuel Amar. But quite often, you find this very often in the Gemara. We don't know. One says this. You often say Mar Amar, V'Mar Amar. Mar means the master. One rabbi says, and another rabbi says, and we don't know which is which.
Because with Hillel and Shammai, you know that one has a certain attitude and the other has an opposite attitude. Do we know that with
that's
these
true?
two?
That's true. But also is true that even with Hillel and Shammai, sometimes we don't know who says which. Not as much as with Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel, this is quite common that you have Chad Amar v'Chad Amar. Okay, so let's just do this. Hadar or lo Hadar? Did he return to being a king or not? Rav or Shmuel? It's a machloket between Rav and Shmuel. Chad Amar Hadar, v'Chad Amar lo Hadar. One says he returned, and one says he didn't return. Man da'amar lo Hadar, the one who said he didn't return, we don't know which one it was, Melech v'Hedyot, says first he was a king, and then he was a Hedyot. What is a Hedyot? And what is a Hedyot? Hedyot means an ordinary person. What's the root of that word? What's the origin of that word? It's over here on the screen for you. It's from the Greek word idiotes, meaning a simple citizen who holds no special office. But we have an English word which comes from it, don't we? Idiot. Idiot. What's an idiot in English? A simple person, a person who is not of great intelligence. Okay, so say it's a root of the same word. Hedyot is the same root as idiotes, which is from the Greek. It's not a Hebrew word, it's a Greek word. And so when somebody, if we use it in halachic terms with the priesthood, we describe there are two types of priest. What are they? How many types of priest do you know?
Kohen Gadol and Kohen Hidyot.
Yes, correct. Kohen Gadol, the high priest, and everybody else. Everybody else is called a Kohen Hidyot. Doesn't mean they're all idiots, although some of them are. It means Kohen Hidyot, a simple priest. In other words, a priest who is not the Kohen Gadol. From the original Greek meaning, which was an ordinary citizen who holds no special office. So the Kohen Hidyot does not hold the office of the Kohen Gadol. That's all it means. The English or the modern English understanding of the word idiot has gone a bit further. I don't know what idiot meant in Old English. Maybe somebody wants to look that up, whether there is an Old English understanding of the word idiot in a different way. Umanda al-Mahadar, and the one that says he did return says Melech, he was a king, Vehedyot, and then he became an ordinary person, a commoner, Umelech, and then he returned to be a king, but not such a powerful king as he was originally. So, right, now then, what is all this business about? how do Rav and Shmuel know that Shlomo HaMelech was deposed from the king? Because both of them say that he stopped being a king. One says he went back to being a king, and the other one says he didn't go back to being a king. But both of them say at some point he was dethroned, right? In line with Reish Lakish in the Gemara, both Rav and Shmuel agree that at some point he was dethroned. Where do they get that from? And now I am going to hand over to Hannah.
Well, now that I spoiled it for you and you stole my thunder, I have to admit that when I was trying to find out about the shamir, I found out more about demons than I did the shamir. I'll start by saying that the shamir was a creature of the size of a barley kernel. Moshe used it to put the names on the ephod and the choshen that the Kohen HaGadol wore, and the way they did it was they wrote the letters on the stones, and then they put the shamir on it. And the term that's used, where I read in the Gemarah, and in most places, is the shamir split the stone or whatever, the stone, along the lines that were drawn. And that's because the shamir could split any substance, no matter how hard, including diamonds. And the precious stones were all very hard, and that's how they engraved the names and the letters on the choshen and on the ephod. When Shlomo read and understood that he couldn't use metal tools in the Beit HaMikdash, although in one place I saw it was only on the altar, but in our tradition we build gderim, so it was extended to the whole temple mound and the temple.
Hannah, 1 second. Let me just help you out here on that particular point. This is a pasuk from Malachim Aleph.
Yeah.
And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, finished at the quarry. And there was neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was in building. So this pasuk here supports the theory that it wasn't just the altar. It was, in fact, the whole Beit HaMikdash, which didn't have any metal tools in. Right, carry on.
In the Gemarah, though, there's an opinion that said that the hewing of the large stones was done outside the temple. It wasn't done on the temple mound, it was done outside. Don't ask me now whose opinion it was, but it was. I'll look it up if it's important. But there is the general consensus is that it was the whole temple, but there's one opinion that says that it was done, the hewing was done outside. But we'll go with there was no. So Shlomo said, how am I supposed to do this if I can't use these tools?
Just let me stop you again for a sec, Hannah. Those of you that want to follow what Hannah is saying, I've put on the screen for you the Gemara in Gittin there. This section here is exactly what Hannah is telling us now. So you can read this is the English translation of the Gemara that Hannah is telling us about. Carry on, Hannah.
There's also, I read the Maharal writes that very often in non-halachic issues of the Gemarah, where the Gemarah tells us things that are not directly concerned with halakha, some of the things are too esoteric to be made public to all the hidyotim, the ordinary people, And so they clothe them, this you'll like, Jonathan, they clothe them in stories and allegories which only certain special people can understand. So the story is not exactly the way it meant to be taken. And that when I kept reading that a couple of times, I thought of you because, you know, you keep saying that the stories are not the way they exactly are. That's so that the text isn't distorted. Now, in Kohelet, it says that Shlomo said, I provided myself with male and female orchestration, which is musical instruments of the Leviim and ordinary people, the delights of mankind, which is baths, hot baths and cold pools for the summer and the winter, and Shida and Shidot, which are in Babylon, Shida is demons.
Have a look at the screen. This is the next bit of the Gemarah. It's on the screen for you as Hannah is speaking.
Now, the rabbi said that when Shlomo didn't know how to build the temple without metal tools, they told him it was the shamir. To get the shamir, so he said, where do I get the shamir from? So the rabbis told him to bring a male and female demon and pressure them. Now, a lot of this is not physical, it's spiritual, you know, the realm that is not your comfort zone. To pressure them. I don't know how he pressured them. And he said, I don't know what, you know, until they tell you, you know, where the shamir is. So that he did this, and the demons didn't know, but they said maybe the king of the demons, which you mentioned last week, Ashmedai, might know. Now,
Ashmedai, king of the demons.
Yes. Now, Divrei Hayamim says that Solomon sat on the throne of God as king. And in Megillah 11b and Sanhedrin 20, which means we should be doing it soon, it says that Solomon ruled over the upper beings, which means...
We did that this morning.
Yeah, right, okay. The Maharal says that only the demons knew where to find the Shedim. And because Solomon ruled over the upper beings, which led to this story, which is an allegory, according to the Ramchal. Now, the demons, Solomon asked, where can I find Ashmedai? So the demons said, on a specific mountain, there's a well of water. And Ashmedai drinks that. Now, the Gemarah also says that the demons can understand us and they can understand the goings on in the upper world. So they spend their time, Ashmedai spends most of his time listening to Shiurim in Gan Eden and also down here. And once a day he comes and he drinks from this well of his. The demons don't eat and drink in the way we do, but they need each demon needs its own special sustenance. And this was the only well that Ashmedai could drink from. So Shlomo sent Benayahu ben
Yehoiada.
Yehoiada.
It's on the screen. The story's carrying on. Carry on.
I don't know whether I was supposed to do all this or whether you're interested, but
yeah, this is exactly what I was going to do. You're doing the share for me. It's great. I've got the Gemarah ready. You're just saying it out. Carry on.
So Benayahu, and the Gemarah goes into how he replaced the water with wine and climbed into a tree and waited for Ashmedai to come and drink and get drunk. Now, Ashmedai used to put his seal he used to close the well and seal it with his seal so that nobody tampered with it. But even so, Benayahu managed to replace the water with wine. And when Ashmedai opened it and he smelt the wine, he realized somebody had done something and he wouldn't drink. But eventually he got too thirsty and he had to drink and he got drunk. Now, the source for demons eating and drinking like humans is in Hagigah and in the Marasha.
Hannah, we've got 5 minutes and I want to get to where Shlomo is deposed. So
okay, so we're nearly there. He got drunk, he fell asleep, and Benayal came out of the tree and he captured him. Shlomo had given him a chain, a gold chain with the name of God on it, and a signet ring with the name of God on it. The chain was to be able to hold Ashmedai because demons have all sorts of powers, and the ring was to protect Benayal from Ashmedai hurting him. So he put the chain on him, and they started off to Jerusalem. There's a nice story there, a couple of nice stories there about meeting a blind person, and Ashmedai who's got lost, and he puts him on his way. A drunkard who's also got lost, and Ashmedai puts him on his way. A wedding, and he cries. And a shoemaker, someone asking to make shoes, and he laughed, and Ashmedai laughed. The Gemarah goes into them, and we can go back to that. When they got to Jerusalem, Ashmedai was held waiting for 3 days before they took him to see Shlomo. That's also got a nice story attached to it, but we're running out of time, so Zil.
Yeah. Those who want to read the full story can go to 68b on Safari that I've got on the screen now, and you can read the full story. Hannah's going to finish us off now. After 3 days, he came and...
Well, this is the point. He was taken to Shlomo, and he asked Shlomo, he says, you rule over the whole world. Why do you have to come and, what do you want from me? So Shlomo says, I don't want anything from you. I want the shamir. So he says, but I don't have the shamir. It's not in my possession. It was given to the master of the sea. And from that, the Gemarah says also that the shamir was a sea creature because it was given to the master of the sea. So, but the shamir wasn't with the master of the sea. He gave it to a wild cock to use. He gave it to the wild cock to use. And this is interesting because the wild cock would take the shamir, put it on a barren mountain. The mountain would split open. The wild cock, which is a duchifat, would collect all sorts of seeds from trees and plants and that, throw them in the split, and with time, the mountain would grow vegetation. Now, I discovered, and I don't know if you want to hear this, but I came to the conclusion in the course of these stories in the Gemarah about the demon, that although demons are portrayed as evil, bad, they're not all that bad all the time. And from the stories on the way to Jerusalem, the Gemarah also concludes that they indicate that demons tend to be malicious against strong and powerful people, and not so much and considerate of people who are weak and ordinary. Now, the Ashmedai says, when he says, you rule over the entire world, and you're not satisfied until you conquered me, he says to him that he will die only ruling over the 4 cubits of his grave, which is why when Julia said maybe it's Mitah is connected to death, yeah, it rang a bell, because that's what Ashmedai says. He says, all you will rule over is the 4 cubits of your grave. And there's also, afterward, he was supposed to, the idea was that he would let him go after the temple was built. But he didn't let Ashmedai go, and he kept him chained up. So one day, he said to Ashmedai, he says, how can I keep you chained up like this if you're so powerful? So Ashmedai said,
Hannah, we need to finish because I need to go. I want you to tell them how he got the shamir in the end.
In the end, Benayahu, I forgot that. Benayahu put glass over the nest of the duchifat, and when it came back, when the duchifat came back to the nest, it was very frustrated because he couldn't get to its chicks, and because of the glass, so he put down the duchifat, the shamir, in order to split open the glass so that he could get to his chicks. And when he put it down, Benayahu grabbed it and took it.
Right.
And
okay.
That's how
now,
we got the shamir.
That's how we got the shamir, right? And he took it back to Shlomo. Now, the most important part of this bit to answer our question is, how do we know that he lost his throne? Is the end of the Ashmedai story. Can you tell us that very quickly, because we're already out of time? Very quickly.
Yeah, that's what I said. He said, if you're so powerful, how come I can think? So he said, take off my chain and give me your signet ring and I'll show you. So he does. So Shlomo does. And as soon as he does that, Ashmedai throws him 400 cubits out of the whole area of Israel, and that's it. And he's got nothing. Then Ashmedai takes his place. And when Shlomo comes back to the Sanhedrin, he claims that he is Shlomo. And the Gemarah quotes that pasuk in Kohelet, I was king in Jerusalem and Israel. And they say that if somebody's deranged, they don't hold the same story all the time. But Shlomo wouldn't budge from this, that he was king. And so they went to the queen and they said, does the king visit you? And she said, yes. So they said, the next time he comes, look at his feet. And his feet were stockinged. Yeah. So they made another they gave a chain and a ring to Shlomo, and they took him into the room with Ashmedai, who was posing as king. And as soon as Ashmedai saw him, he fled. Yeah, and he left Shlomo, and presumably Shlomo took the throne again.
Right, so there you go. So now you know, don't you, why when I asked Hannah, I asked you all right at the beginning, did Shlomo die as king? That's why Hannah knew the answer, because she'd done her homework. That story is every bit as weird and wonderful as anything that J.K. Rowling has written. It's all in the Gemarah 68b. Thank you, Hannah, for doing all that. It's on the screen there. I'm going to take it off the screen now because we're out of time.
Can I say something?
Go on.
To the business of Shlomo at the end of his days, in several places it's written that there's a problem with Shlomo at the end of his days. He allowed idol worship in his home. Chachamim write that, it wasn't all the same thing, which also goes to this business of whether he died as an effective king or not.
Yeah, well, there's certainly big doubts about it, which is why what I said to you, I think last week, I can't understand why anybody would call their kid Shlomo after reading all of this. But still, that's something else. So this amazing story in Gittin 68a and b is there for you to read. As Hannah said, I'm not very comfortable with all of this stuff. Don't understand it. I understand it to be allegorical. I understand it to be a mashal, not something to be taken literally. But if you want to know about the shamir,
you've got good company, because the Maharal definitely says that very specifically
And the Rambam
it's a
says,
matal.
and the Ramban. So, you know, I've got who to rely on.
There's a very good summary of the Maharal's opinion, which Hannah's probably read in the Art Scroll to Gittin, 68b, note 47.
Okay, we'll have a look
It's
at
a long
that.
note. You might want to
that.
take a look at it for next week.
I will send you a summary of my research on the Shamir. I'll send it on the Leon Bennett group. I'll send you a little document that I put together with my research on the Shamir, and you can have a look at that as well. I need to go.
There's one more comment on the Shamir, that the Gemara writes that it ceased to exist when the first temple was destroyed, like the Tarshish, where they used the hides. The animal they used the hides from.
So there's another opinion which I much prefer, of course, which is a rational opinion as to what it is.
It's radioactive.
Some kind of radioactive, some kind of chemical, some kind of laser. I'll send you what I found, and you pays your money, you takes your choice. Right. Shavua Tov, everybody. See you all next week. Please God.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank